Howdy. All right, guys, we're here. We're gonna do it. We're gonna watch Ana Kasparian eviscerate Earl Davis. Um, I've seen some clips of this. It seemed really fucking brutal. So we're gonna react to that. I'm gonna continue doing some of my little model kit stuff in the meantime. All right, so let's let it play.
Ladies and gentlemen, this debate, our main card, has a little bit of a different format
The main
than what we
card.
did previously. We're going to have the opening statements for both of you. Those will be 5 minutes apiece. Then you'll each get 10 minutes to kind of do an interrogatory with the other. That will go back and forth. And then after that, we'll go into open debate. As you saw with some of the other debates earlier, we try to let the other person answer. I'll try to jump in as I can, but for the most part, I want you all to mix it up, all right? Have fun with it.
Sounds good.
And who was first?
I'm first.
I thought so. Anna, take it away. We got 5 minutes.
Like, I'm missing a box.
In a May 2024 appearance on Tim Pool's Culture War podcast, my opponent, Pearl Davis, declared that women aren't really doing much. We're not having kids. We're not really contributing to the economy when you look at output.
Sorry.
In fact, she uses this ridiculous assertion to argue that women should not have the right to vote. While it's true the birth rate has declined, and we'll revisit that.
How does the audio? Let me check the audio real fast. Audio. I want to see how loud YouTube video is real fast in comparison to my own voice. The funnest part about streaming that they don't tell you is the audio. The audio is always a pain in the ass. And make sure it sounds right. Gotta get out of the way now, otherwise it'll be like this for the entire stream and it'll be a mess. Sure it sounds right. Gotta get out of the way now.
Contributing to the economy, he uses this ridiculous assertion to argue that the birth rate.
Let me check the audio real fast. Audio. Okay, that sounds good. I think that's a good mix. Okay.
For 47% of the American workforce.
And I am listening. Let me I need to grab a box real fast.
Found that women
I am
have
listening.
contributed a substantial portion of the U.S. economic growth since 1970, which wouldn't have been made possible without the feminist movement. By 2017, women were responsible for nearly 40% of total gross domestic product, amounting to a whopping $7.6 trillion. Of course, that figure doesn't include the trillions of dollars in unpaid labor women do every year, tending to the household, raising children, and caring for ailing parents. And when it comes to certain sectors of our economy, women are a dominant and indispensable force. Like in the healthcare industry, where they make up nearly 80% of workers, according to the Bureau of Labor Statistics. That's 16.4 million women. When it comes to education, in 1960, women earned less than 35% of all bachelor's degrees. Today, they earn roughly 58%
I have no idea what I did with that box.
Degrees,
That's
which
okay.
Pearl herself benefited from after graduating from Elmhurst University.
Hold on a second, I have like dual audio coming here. I don't need this one. Okay, here we go.
Women also earn over 60% of master's degrees. I hope to hear Pearl explain how a more educated and skilled population somehow translates to cultural decline, especially as we compete with China in this increasingly multipolar world.
I'm such a smart guy. It was right in front of me the whole time.
On decreasing domestic violence, and that's according to the U.S. Department of Justice. Rates of intimate partner violence decreased by more than 60% from 1994 to 2010. And that's thanks to protective order statutes and funding for shelters beginning in the 1970s and 80s. Not only did the two-income household become more financially resilient, especially during economic downturns, women gained the ability to leave abusive relationships, an outcome correlated with improved child health and educational attainment. A culture that protects people from violence is not one that's indicative of cultural decline. Pearl herself has benefited greatly from the feminist movement, thanks to Title IX in 1972, signed by Nixon, of course. Sex-based discrimination.
Very true, right? It's always really kind of awkward when you have like these like right-wing, you know, quote-unquote red pill women, and they complain about feminism, and it's like, bro, like you work because of feminism. You work in politics of all things. And then here you are telling other women that they shouldn't, and they should just stay home and like subjugate themselves to men.
Activity that receives federal funding is
kind of ridiculous in my view, you know. What do I know?
Impressive record playing for Elmhurst University's volleyball team, having earned all conference honors as a senior. She later pursued professional volleyball in London. She could have stayed in the United States and served in her role as a traditional woman, but she didn't. And she could have been the traditional chaste woman living out her dream of everything women were supposed to do before feminism.
Minor gripe, but it's chaste, but it's okay. We're forgive her.
Traditional nor chaste by her own admission. While feminists would have no problem with her personal choice.
I mean, she's neither chaste nor chaste, am I right?
Bashing women for theirs. Critics often argue that modern feminism has weakened families and resulted in a lower birth rate. They tend to dismiss empirical evidence demonstrating the insidious impact of the internet, social media on modern relationships. They also brush economic instability under the rug, despite young people citing their personal finances as the main reason why they're holding off on marriage in the first place. In lieu of discussing those factors,
marriage, gross.
Much of her time discouraging men from getting married in the first place. During her debate with Trent Horn, she declared that men are better off shacking up without ever getting married.
You know, that's a really good point. I haven't really thought about like kind of that contradiction yet, but that's a legit point. Is that is true? They are constantly talking about the decline of marriage and traditional gender roles, and then the red pillars are also telling men all the time like these hoes ain't shit, these women ain't shit, don't get married, blah 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 blah. Right? That's a good point.
Women are too fat and STD infected.
It's always so stupid too, because there's like this impression that they have that like every woman is like I don't know, sleeps around with everybody, is all on Tinder and everything, and I don't have a problem with that, by the way. I don't really care, but their perception of like the average woman is based on, honestly, it's based on the kind of women that they chase, like these red pill guys. They want like these like uber like sexualized you know, Instagram OnlyFans models that they bring onto their shows, and then they act like those are like your average woman. And we live in a Western country where like even if you are engaging in you know, promiscuity or whatever you want to call it, like the rate of STDs is pretty low, and the STDs that people do get are treatable. So like, I don't know, it's just stupid. I mean, I'm curious to hear the stats. I don't know what the stats are. I assume that it's pretty low. Maybe it's higher than I think it is, but I don't know. If women have a lot of STDs, then men probably have even more STDs. I don't, of course. I would never.
5%, that's a lot. You did.
Oh, did you say 5% or 25%?
She didn't stop to think about how they contracted the STD.
Yeah, who did they contract him from? Yeah.
Data from the National Library of Medicine shows
Here we go.
that modern men are just as promiscuous as modern women. Men and women are in bad shape, and in the United States, we can discuss why, but feminism is not the reason.
Very good. Thank you. Nice job. Okay, Earl, we got 5 minutes. You're going to be on the clock.
Good opening statement. I'd be very curious to see what her debate preparation is, because it was very concise, very on the point, got through all the major points that she needed to make, and you know, without wasting time or anything, it was really smooth.
And let's go.
Most debaters and commentators are elitists who tell average Americans from their ivory tower.
Everybody else is an elitist. Everybody else tells everybody else from their ivory tower. But I'm this rich person born with a silver spoon in my mouth, and I'm going to tell you what you're supposed to think about the world. But I'm not elitist. Everybody else is.
What to think and how to feel. My answer to this question not only.
So let me tell you how to think and what to feel.
Researching the facts, data, and statistics, but also in my professional experience interviewing over 1,000 people in America and Western nations. Feminism has given women power, and power corrupts. And that's what's happening. Feminism is robbing men of...
I mean, what are you supposed to do with that? What, I mean, if you're saying, okay, just the fact that you're empowering people, or you're giving people freedom of choice and everything, and that corrupts, then wouldn't that also apply to men, or no?
Of their disposable income and their prime earning years. Feminism has
critical error.
It has empowered women to be sexually promiscuous.
Base.
Feminists say that they fought for women to not subject themselves to the approval of men. Why then are 5 to 10% of women between the ages of 18 to 25 on OnlyFans or other prostitution?
I don't even know if that's true. 5 to 10% sounds kind of high. But like, another way of saying that is anywhere between 90 to 95% of women are not on those things. So why are we focusing on like a minority of a minority? That's silly.
Websites. There are more online prostitutes in America than female Walmart employees. 1 of 3 women will catch an STD at some point in their lifetime. 90% will catch HPV, which is incurable. Feminism has empowered women to abort 1/8 of the world population and 1/3.
Again, I mean, what are the stats for men? Because these might just be normal things. HPV, is that... I mean, I get mixed up. I don't know my freaking sexually transmitted diseases, because I never have sex. I would never do that. HPV, is that just like where you have like little blisters and shit? Papillomavirus. What's is that herpes? Same thing as herpes? And herpes are distinct STIs. Okay, so those are 2 different ones. HPV does cause warts or no symptoms, but some types can lead to cancer, while herpes causes painful fluid blisters that come and go. Okay, interesting. What did she say the prevalence of it was? Let's Google this. We shouldn't always, or we should never kind of take for granted these things. Rate of HPV in and women. Let's see. Okay, so 40 to 45% of men and 38 to 40% of women. I mean, what did I tell you? I mean, it's just maybe it's not a good thing, but it's just a normal thing, and this isn't like particular to women. This is just kind of our population in general.
Third of Gen Z. Feminists have been so empowered to commit paternity fraud. Paternity fraud is unpunished in any state in the USA or any country in the West. If done correctly, a man will have to pay for a child he was fooled into believing was his until that child reaches maturity. In some states, that...
Okay, again, I mean, let's even check that this is even true. Paternity fraud or paternity fraud in the U.S. Paternity fraud in the U.S. involves intentionally misleading a child's father, often for financial grade like child support, leading to legal issues for falsely alleged fathers who may have been to support non-biological children, but can sometimes challenge paternity via DNA tests, especially in states like Texas, though it's not always a crime, highlighting the emotional toll, blah, blah, blah. Legal landscape. Not always criminal. In many U.S. states, paternity fraud isn't a specific crime, so there aren't automatic criminal penalties, though fraudulently collecting support is immoral. Okay, I don't want to know if it's immoral. I want to know if it's illegal. Now, when they say here it isn't a specific crime, that doesn't mean that it's not going to be illegal. It might mean that there's not a specific crime for it. Like, for example, there might not be... This might sound really silly. I have a computer mouse, right? There may not be a specific computer mouse theft crime, you know, like vehicular theft or something. There may not be one specific to people stealing mice or mouses, or whatever you want to call it. I know that it's a weird example, but the point I'm making is that you don't necessarily need to have a specific crime for every type of theft or every type of fraud. If you were committing paternity fraud, that may just fall under other types of fraud you might be able to charge someone with, right? So I'm kind of curious here. Challenging paternity. Men can often challenge paternity, especially with DNA evidence. The laws vary. Texas, for example, passed laws allowing challenges to child support obligations based on genetic testing results. Husband presumption. Legally, a husband is often presumed to be a father of a child born during marriage, creating vulnerability for unwitting men. Now, I mean, if there is a little bit of like vagueness in the law there. I mean, all that's fair, and you can bring that up, and I don't even think most people would disagree with you. But this doesn't have anything to do with feminism, though, right? Unlock this, you must be a study member. Bro, are you serious? Come on. Information. Paternity fraud. Okay. Misattributed paternity or paternity discrepancy. British fathers. In 2005 scientific review of international published studies, paternity discrepancy found a range of incidents around the world from 0.8 to 30%. That's a huge spread. That's almost like useless information, useless data, because between 0.8 and 30%. How reliable are the results of such a survey, right? One study published, a rate near 30% was performed on population, which the reported father already suspected. Oh, okay. So here's a study here that said that the rate was near 30%. But important distinction here. The sample was specifically of fathers who already suspected that they were not the genetic parent, which would make sense to me, right? If you take a population of men, these are specifically the men that think that they may not be the father. There's probably a good chance that like a significant amount of those men probably feel that way for a reason, right? But it's not really indicative of like the overall population of men, like the broad population of men, including the men that don't necessarily have a reason to think they're not the father. Studies ranging in date from 1991 to 1999 reported the following incidence rates: 11.8% in Mexico, 4% in Canada, 2.8 in France, 1.4 and 1.6 in UK, 0.8 in Switzerland. So if you're looking at like the broader population of men, the rate is pretty low. It's going to be anywhere between, looks like 11% to 0.8%. These numbers generally suggest that widely quoted and unsubstantiated figure of 10% of non-maternal parents events is an overestimate. However, in studies that solely looked at couples who obtained paternity testing because paternity was being disputed, that's kind of reiterating what we said before. 2008 study in the United Kingdom found that biological fathers were misidentified in 0.2, 1 in every 500 cases. Okay. So, I mean, the rate of it seems pretty low in general. And then the other thing we want to know is, what is the actual law associated with? The United States has historically imposed a strong presumption of paternity and also imposed barriers to paternity challenges once paternity has been legally established. Since the advent of DNA testing, laws and guidelines have been proposed or enacted that may allow for a paternity challenge by a legal father who later determines he is not the child's biological father, Mari, or by a biological father who learns that somebody else has been named the child's birth certificate as the child's father. In California, in the case of County versus Los Angeles versus Navarro, 1996, County of Los Angeles entered a default judgment against punitive father Mr. Navarro and ordered him to pay monthly support for Ms. Doe's 2 children. The complaint to establish paternity filed by the Bureau of Family Support Operations was based on information provided by Ms. Doe naming Manuel Nava as the children's father. The agency determined that Mr. Navarro was the father in question and delivered notice to his sister's residence, where Mr. Navarro was listed as co-tenant, and notice Mr. Navarro denied ever receiving. Okay, if I'm reading this right, this sounds like a case where there was this guy here who was the biological father who didn't want to take responsibility, and then basically the state served him notice that he needs to take responsibility. Okay. Which, by the way, super nuclear hot take here. I think that I'm very supportive of abortion rights, and I think that men should also have the option to opt out. But I think that opting out needs to be, like, you need to decide before the child is born. I don't think you get to, like, just flip back and forth, over and over again. And it needs to be up to the woman, right? Like, she needs to kind of have that be a part of her determination whether or not she wants to have a child, is knowing in advance, like, am I going to be supported by the other parent or not? So that she can make an informed decision in that case. But I think that's fair. I think that if a woman should be able to opt out, and me personally, I think that women should be able to opt out, for the reason that they should have control over their own destiny. If they don't foresee themselves being a parent anytime soon. I think that they should have control over that. Of course, there's a cutoff for that. Call it the first trimester, call it about 20 weeks when the child reaches consciousness. But up until that time, I think that it's fair that women should be able to decide whether or not they actually want to commit to parenthood, because parenthood is an 18-year commitment, and that's at minimum. And realistically, it's going to be more than that for most people who are like decent parents, right? Okay, so in 2001, Mr. Navarro undergone DNA testing showing he was not the father. Sued the County of Los Angeles, asking to be relieved from the support order. I've heard someone make a proposition for this. I think it'd be a really good idea. Is that there might be a country that does this where they do automatic parental DNA testing or paternity testing when the child is born. I think that would be good because it removes some of that awkwardness of like a guy asking for it. And then also, there's not going to really be a question in like any of the scenarios if the guy is actually a father or not. I think that's fair. I think that's fine. I'm curious what that would even cost. I'm not going to dive into looking at that right now, but I mean, if we were to have like a universal healthcare system, what would the cost be versus what we have right now with like a private system? Because the cost associated with doing that for every parent might be different in the current system that we have now. Things are more expensive than you have in systems that have universal health care. I'd just kind of be a little bit curious what it would cost our system. Okay. In 2004, Court of Appeal reversed the trial. Okay, this is a whole fucking thing about Mr. Navarro. In 2022, Governor Gray Davis vetoed a proposed Paternity Justice Act, which would have provided more protections for victims of paternity fraud, citing that the bill could cost the state $40 million in federal funding. In 2004, California Governor Arnold Schwarzenegger signed into law AB 252, which allows men to prove they are not the biological father. More resources to fight paying child support. The law expired in 2007. Oh, that's interesting. Why would you have the law expired? Yeah, so I mean, honestly, there might be some room for tightening up the law around this whole issue, but I don't necessarily think that this is like a feminism issue. I don't even know if feminists are against this. Oftentimes online, people will just assume like, if it's anything that's good for a man or kind of considerate of a man, then feminists must be against it. And it's like, why don't you ask them first before you assume this about them, right? I mean, I'm kind of curious. Let's see. Asking how do feminists feel about a particular topic is kind of silly because there's a lot of different types of branches of feminism. But what I would be curious about is like, maybe there's a few prominent organizations within the feminist movement about paternity fraud. What's their position on it? Feminist perspective on paternity are varied, acknowledging is serious, blah, blah, blah. Here, let's go to Reddit. Are feminists, ask feminists, let's see what they say here. I'll ask you alternative question. Should it be criminalized for a married man to father a child out of wedlock, perhaps with an affair partner, and not tell his wife? Presuming that he's sending money to a child monthly or seeing them every so often, of course. This seems like an unproductive question, to be honest. It's not illegal to ask for a paternity test. Your partner might consider it questionable and might damage your relationship, but you are allowed to ask for one as a man. No one keeps you from it, so this person seems pretty supportive. Mandating paternity testing, however, puts a whole lot of suspicion on women as a group, and depending on when you do it, infringes on bodily autonomy. That's why I won't support that, criminalizing paternity fraud. Well, I can understand this perspective here that, you can't, maybe it's a little bit weird to force a paternity test on a woman. I wonder how invasive such a thing is. I would imagine that you could just pull it from urine samples, right? But with that said, if you're going to take that perspective, then I think it's fair to say, like, from the guy's end of things, like, if you're not going to get a paternity test, then he should be able to opt out. I mean, I already have that perspective in general. I think with the current existing law. Criminalizing paternity fraud, I'm not entirely sure on how you're going to prove intent, and it could be very easily be used against pregnant folks. So IDK, if it's a good idea. I mean, that's a good point. I don't know. Yeah, when we say this paternity fraud, are we saying that the person, like the woman, is like intentionally doing it? Because I guess there could be scenarios where maybe there wasn't unintended. Maybe like someone breaks up and then they get back together or something like that in a short period of time. But I think more what I'm concerned about is if a guy wants to opt out, especially if he's not the parent, not the biological father, I think that he should have some sort of informed consent in that regard. Okay. That's another paternity fraud. I'm out. I won't discuss any buzzwords in a word. Okay, that's not mature or productive. I don't think. Can't just like you can't just opt out of questions like this. Like as the feminist movement, you guys got to be able to answer questions like this. Is this an issue here? These issues are handled at the state level where I live. In my state, a punitive father can petition for a paternity test, same as a mother. You know, why would the mother need to do paternity? Okay. Oh, I guess if she wants a paternity test from the father. Okay. If the punitive father is found not to be the biological father and he has a reason to believe there's intentional fraud, he can sue. If the couple is not married at the time of birth, the man cannot be listed as a father on the birth certificate. Okay. This person's listing this out here, and it seems to me that from the way that this is framed here that they're supportive of this. Also, paternity fraud is pretty rare and kind of a non-issue. Fair. Number one, you still have to prove someone behaved deceitfully or had intent to defraud someone. Number two, many countries already have legislated such laws. Number three, it is in the government's interest for kids to have both parents involved by default, to the point of not carrying out the biological parents, but only caring about the legal parents. I disagree with this. It is in the government's interest, but I don't think the government's interest in the government may have an interest in. Yeah, I mean, we could just use this as an example. The government may have an interest in children having like the right amount of like financial and parental support to grow into healthy individuals. But if I have absolutely fucking nothing to do with that family or that child, that's not my responsibility, right? So it's not fair, I think, for the government to take that interest in the kid having both parents and then use that as justification to in my view, impugn the rights of someone who is not the biological parent, right? Just get a paternity test, bro. It's not that difficult to get. So that person seems supportive. Probably because when men who are around children that aren't biologically theirs, they are more likely to be violent towards them. And very rarely will stick around. Forcing one to reveal the child isn't their partner's exposes both the child and woman to immediate physical care. That's fairish, but it's not a solution. It's one of those things where it's like, okay, because one party may potentially have a risk associated with it, then we're going to put all of the burden on this other party when it's really genuinely not fair to. I don't think that's fair. I don't think when you have a particular risk or something might not work out well for you, I don't think it's appropriate in almost any scenario to use the state to then punish somebody else who's not responsible. I don't think that's a good perspective to have. But I don't know, maybe this is, I'm seeing a little bit of a mixed story here, but I'm a little bit disappointed. I was hoping to see a little bit more of a majority perspective here that was a little bit more reasonable. It seems to be almost like 50-50. Granted, there's just a handful of people off of Reddit. It doesn't really mean anything. Okay, all right, well, I don't want to get too hung up, so let's continue on with this debate here.
We'll also have to pay for that kid's college. That is slavery and is forbidden under the 13th Amendment. 1/3 of...
I mean, that argument that it's slavery, like, yeah, parents have to take care of their kids. I guess if you really want to be reductive and stupid, you can call that slavery, but I don't think most people would consider parents having an obligation to take care of their children as slavery.
Paternity tests are negative by the American Association of Blood Banks. Feminism has empowered women to rob men of their time, their resources, their reputation, their children, and in the most extreme cases, their lives. They do this through child support, alimony, false allegations, and paternity fraud. How many people in this arena have a brother, a father, an uncle, or a friend who has gone through this meat grinder?
She says this, but I don't think it's that common. I don't really know anybody in my life who that is the case for. And I know a lot of different people. Again, that's not to say that it doesn't happen, but I don't think it's as common as she's trying to make it portrayed as. The issue is that when you have like an ideological group that you're a part of, or some kind of big cultural, social, political issue that you are really deeply into, you may overestimate the prevalence of that thing because you're someone who is overly focused on it, right? I don't think it's that common. Not to say that the instances where it does happen are okay, it's not, but
it's a silent genocide. of the lives of millions of men.
What's a
Standing
silent
on the
genocide?
sidelines of the arena, I have 33-year combat veteran Terrence Popp. He served through 3 wars and was almost killed in 2. He got married, had 2 children, and served in the United States Army. Terrence Popp was deployed to Iraq in 2004, and as a member of the airborne infantry, he was wounded by a roadside bomb and suffered a TBI and a stroke from the blast. He was evacuated out of the country, and it took over 2 years until he had recovered. While he was recovering, his wife was plotting to divorce him. His wife murdered his 6-year-old chocolate lab out of spite because he filed for divorce first. When he confronted her, the response he got was, "I told you I did not want you living here." At this point, he was forced to leave the marital home and live out of his car. The divorce took away his home, his children, and left him penniless and saddled with a child support payment he could not afford. Terrence had to pay $144,000.
I mean, this sounds pretty shitty, but I don't know if this story's even true. I don't know if she's embellishing things. I know that there's a tendency for these people to embellish these kind of stories. I don't want to dive into this one either.
Over a 12-year period for a divorce that his wife was empowered by feminists to plan and execute. Terrence,
Where does she get that his wife was empowered by feminists to execute this, though? You know what I mean? Like, some of the things she might bring up are like legitimate concerns, right? I think men do have issues. I would never say that they don't. I mean, I think that men and women both have issues, different kinds of issues. But just because men might have issues or they might be treated unfairly by the law in some areas, that doesn't mean that feminists are the reason behind it. You know, it's like anything that bad that happens to men, sometimes in these red pill spaces, it seems like they just automatically blame feminists for some reason, you know? I think the reason is because they just don't like feminists.
fight for 50-50 custody. Terrence was called a murderer and an assassin in open court and was given 96 hours a month with his children. 96 hours a month is not a father. While homeless, he spoke to many other men who would never get off the streets due to child support or...
Okay, wait a second. So, I mean, I would have to dive into the story to really know what's going on here, and I don't want to, but there's questions that you need to ask with something like this, right? So, he was homeless, he suffers from PTSD, and he was asking for custody of the children. I'm sorry, but like, what do you think the court's going to say in that scenario? That you're going to give the children to a person who is homeless and suffers from PTSD? PTSD, like, by the way, I'm not trying to say PTSD, let's just take children away from people with PTSD. It sucks. It's bad. You know, I'm sympathetic to it and everything. But the safety of the children is always going to come first. So in a scenario like that, yeah, you know, you'd have to dive into the details to know. But it's reasonable to question whether or not the court would take those factors into consideration.
Arrearages and penalties, and the men constantly getting arrested for unpaid child support. The disparage of losing his children and his home, and his PTSD and constant pain from his wounds, he became suicidal. Well, at his
okay, so, well, okay, I guess that could have happened after the fact, but it is worth questioning, when was he suicidal? If he was suicidal while he was asking for custody, of course the court's going to look at that and think to themselves, this person may not be particularly stable for their children.
In 2008, a former commander of his came to see him to secretly say his last goodbyes. The next day, Mr. Popp's former commander put on his dress blues and went to the Holy National Veterans Cemetery and blew his brains out. Terrence Popp was notified of the death and was shocked because he was planning to commit suicide in the exact same manner. So in effect, his former commander took the...
Now notice, by the way, the whole point of this anecdote is it's emotional. I don't want to say manipulation, it's a little bit strong, but you know what I mean. It's appeal to an emotion. It's like, this is a very like tragic story that we're telling here, and it sounds bad. I mean, if I take everything at face value, oh yeah, it sounds pretty shitty. I feel bad for this guy. You know, he went to war, he had PTSD. I don't blame people who've been in war for developing that, and that may have affected his relationship, with his children. You know, and that sucks. But you know, what we really want to look at is data. We want to look at what is the law. We want to look at what are the standards are, and the most important thing, the whole topic of this conversation. What does this have to do with feminists? Why does she just automatically blame feminists for these things?
The bullet that was meant for him. Terrence Popp decided he would not kill himself and has spent the last 20 years saving 576 men from suicide with comedy. If you look to the left of the stage, Terrence is holding the dog tags for every life that he has saved. Now, why am I telling you this? Shout out
To
yeah.
appeal to emotion.
Now, why am I telling you this? Because men and American veterans are put in this position because of the empowerment that feminists like Anna have pushed for. There are millions of men that have died in this country from the political power that feminism pushes.
Again, like, what is she talking about? Like, what specifically there? Anybody could just say, like, oh, Terrence was put in this situation because of people who like to play tennis on Sundays. Yeah, I know that's a stupid and random example, but, like, you need to actually tell me, like, why are you connecting the scenario that he went through with feminists? I think this kind of rhetoric works for her audience because her audience already has a bias against feminists, and they already think that feminism is behind a lot of the issues that men face. So she doesn't really have to justify it, but, like, you do actually need to justify it. You do need to actually establish that there's a connection there. Otherwise, you're just blaming them for no reason.
Since 1970, an estimated 1.6 million men have committed suicide.
Time. Stop there.
If feminists cared about equality, why aren't they fighting for equality in divorce and family court as hard as they are fighting for abortion, working, or becoming?
How do you know they're not? I mean, I don't even know what that means, actually. One thing that I know with the red pill is that they often like to cite that in divorce, you know, women will get alimony from their partner, but there's a reason for that. There's a legal rationale for why that's the case. So basically, the reason why that's the case is women will forego their career to support their male partner. And so they're foregoing their own earning potential and their own career potential. And so that's like an agreement. It's almost like a contract that you're making with the other person to do that. And so when you divorce, that estate that those two people have, they built together because the man was able to build that estate because he had the support of his wife taking care of the home, right? You can't, to a very real in a very real sense, that estate is a shared thing that both of them kind of collaborated to put together. And when you get married, you are making the decision to tie your finances together. If you don't want to get married, don't get married. But when you're getting married, you are making that decision to treat you guys as a unit. And so when you get separated, the assets that you built as a unit will have to get divvied up. I mean, if you're afraid of that, don't get married. But, like, you know, that's kind of on you.
Sex workers. Thank you.
Okay.
Woo!
This is gonna be a heavy one. We're gonna go now to the opening interrogations. We have 10 minutes. Do we have that on the clock? Yeah, it's fading in right there. Okay, and take it away. 10 minutes.
Who's interrogating who?
Whoever wants to begin.
Aside from the specific anecdote that you shared, which of course is tragic, can you cite some actual studies that look at these
This is subtle, but it's important, right? Some people will fall into the trap of you're oppositional to the other person, right? You're in a debate with the other person. So you might just fall into the habit of, I'm just going to invalidate everything that you say. I'm going to disagree with everything that you talk about. I'm going to try to mock everything that you talk about. But in this case, she doesn't need to do that, right? The story that you told me, if it's true, if we take it at face value, like, I agree, that's pretty tragic. However, right, that doesn't mean that that is the fault of feminists. You know, there's some other, like, legal factors that we need to consider here, right? You don't want to sound like you're unreasonable, like you're unfair, or that you're biased. And her doing that right from the onset kind of nullifies the ability for the other side to say, oh, you're just coming at a position from bias. No, you know, I acknowledge, like, yeah, that is kind of a tragic scenario. But, you know, let's get into the meat and potatoes.
Statistics and back up what you say in regard to the outcomes of marriage and divorce in America.
41% of 109 rape cases reported to police in a Midwestern city.
What? Okay. 49% of 100 and whatever cases. Yeah, you need to understand, like, the whole concept of truth lies in statistics. Why are we singling out these specific cases and using that? Why aren't we using a representative sample, right? You always want to use a representative sample. What you mean by that is this is a sample that is reflective of the population. For example, if you were to take polling of the United States, you would want the sample of people that you poll. Like you're not going to poll literally 340 million Americans. What you're going to do instead is you're going to look at the demographic breakdown of the United States. You're going to see like, okay, we have like 13% black people, we have like 67% white people, we have 23%, Latino people, we have 8% Chinese, Asian, whatever it is, right? And so you then want your sample to be kind of roughly matching that. You might want to have about 13% of your sample to be, black people, and so on and so forth. If you're doing it by party affiliation, you might want to go, okay, what percentage of the population is conservative versus liberal? And then from that, we're going to kind of see, like, when we make a sample, we want to have, roughly the same kind of proportions there. When you're instead doing 49% of 100 and whatever cases from a particular town, why are you singling out one particular town? That town may not be, representative of the overall country, because, different towns, different cities have different cultures, different factors going on there. And then these 100 and whatever so cases, why those specific cases, right? These are things that when you hear it statistically, this should stand out to you as like a red flag of, why are you kind of cherry picking the data there? Are you cherry picking specifically because you want the data that's going to confirm the narrative that you're trying to spin?
Were admitted to be false by complaint.
In one Midwestern city?
Yeah.
And which Midwestern city was that?
You can go from your ivory tower and
I'm
tell
not in
people
an
what
ivory
to
tower.
think
I'm
and
on
how
this
to
debate
What?
stage.
What? Wow. How weak. That's not an ivory tower. That you're in a debate. When you're in a debate, you have to back up the things that you said. This is a totally reasonable criticism of what you're bringing up here. But notice the tactic there is Pearl, like this is the talking point from the right, from the red pill spaces. Everybody else is out to get you. Everybody else is the elite. Everybody else is looking down on you. Somebody starts to bring up a good point, and it's like, oh, don't listen to them. They're just the elite. They're looking down on you. They're looking down from their ivory tower. Bro, I'm just asking like a legitimate question. What the fuck?
Interrogating your assertions, and you've only provided an anecdote.
Right.
Because
It's
if you
not-
look at the
Right.
data, which I did, of course, you'll find that women are twice as likely to fall into poverty after divorce.
Right, because they can't
Alimony
stop
is
spending.
paid out in 10% of divorces. According to the Census Bureau, the average child support payment
she
is
came with data.
$41 a month, and only 60%
Right, but how
of
much are
those
they
payments
making?
get paid out.
How much?
Women do not get child custody 90% of the time, as you have asserted before. In fact,
Ooh, look at Pearl there. She's trying to
95% of custody
feverishly go through her
cases
notes, trying to
are
figure out how to
usually
counter
agreed
this.
upon outside of the courtroom. Women
That is also a good point. I've heard about this before because a lot of times they do talk about like divorce court and how you're doing like child custody and whatnot as being unfair. It is interesting to note, and it's a really important thing to note, is that yeah, a lot of it gets settled outside of court. I think the majority of cases, the man actually doesn't really want to have custody or full custody, which I can kind of get it. Maybe, it doesn't necessarily make you a monster. Maybe you think that the mother is maybe a little bit of the better, caregiver. That's fine. But it is worth mentioning, like, if the men are kind of deciding, like, mutually with the other party that this is the arrangement that makes sense for them, then how are you gonna act like that is some sort of conspiracy against men?
women get full custody 40% of the time. Men do get full custody 20% of the time. And 40% of the time, it's shared custody, which I think
40%,
is the ideal
that's pretty
assuming that
high percentage compared to the way that the red pill talks about it. Makes it sound like it'd be way less than that.
Take your microphone out and hold it. It would be easier to hear you.
Okay. Alimony and medical care and dental are not covered by that, so a lot of times it does go above 50%. Again, you can go through the facts.
I might be a little lost. I don't know what she was referring to there.
Them any way that you want.
It's not
You
manipulation.
could, but you know that kind of goes both ways, and that's why we interrogate the statistics and we try to look at like, are you using a representative sample or whatnot? Because it seems like so far you've actually tried to manipulate the statistics by cherry picking your data set.
Those are the stats.
There are 1.6 million men in this country. Men are 9 times more likely to commit suicide after a divorce.
Compared to women, what's the number for women?
It's lower.
Really? What is it? Comparative.
Oh, she doesn't even know.
For you, isn't it?
Okay.
Didn't come prepared.
Go ahead, Pearl.
What's your next question?
You have asserted that men shouldn't get married, that instead they should
I
shack
didn't say
up.
that.
You did say that with
did
Trent
not say
Horn,
that.
word for word.
Oh
You
man,
said
she got the
it makes more
receipts.
sense for them to shack up, live with a girlfriend instead of getting married. Do you think the advice that you give to men is the type of advice?
This reminds me of the meme that's kind of been spread around lately, where it's like it tells men like, oh, women need to stay pure. Men should like go out there and get experience with women, and it's like, get experience with what women? Like the same women that you're saying need to stay pure? Don't you realize that you're setting up that scenario yourself?
That will fulfill their lives. Because I'll tell you one thing, the best part of my life is my husband. I love my husband. He's my rock.
Tactically, this is a good debate tactic from Anna, because the red pill, they try to frame it as like liberals, left-wingers, feminists hate men and that they don't value men. So Anna's saying this here, and there's nothing wrong with saying this, by the way. Like men, men should appreciate women, women should appreciate men, as long as the men are, not assholes or anything. But it's totally going to take that argument away from Pearl Davis. Pearl Davis isn't going to be able to say or try to spin the argument that, oh, you're just biased against men, you just hate men. Anna just straight up came out there and said, no, I love my husband. He's pretty fucking cool. You know what I mean? Clip that, guys. Pause.
He's my foundation. And no, my husband is number one. I love my career, but you know what my career did? When I met my husband, my career was already established. He, on the other hand,
Ooh, another tactical nuke right there. What that does as well is, because there's a whole narrative on the right from the red pill space about how women are into hypergamy, meaning this whole idea that women only care about men who are like high status and everything. Well, she's saying, I had a career. My career was better than my husband's. I still got together with him. Kind of pulls that whole kind of narrative away that, women, even these liberal women, they're all hypocrites because they really just want men of high value. No, Anna's saying, nope. Me having a career freed me up, and having a successful career freed me up to focus more on compatibility, maybe emotional, spiritual compatibility, whatever that may be,
He was in debt and didn't.
By the way, like, you might be surprised if you're a guy out there, you're listening to me, you're a young guy, and you hear all these narratives and stuff. I've worked around a lot of women, legitimately. And there's been a lot of women, career women especially, that there's a lot of them who are willing to date a guy who isn't making as much as they are. If they're making a lot of money, they're making a lot of good money. There's more than you'd imagine that would be willing to date a guy who makes less than them. But, okay, here's the caveat, and this is a fair caveat. They don't want to date a bum. That doesn't mean the guy needs to be the millionaire, but what it does mean is he needs to fucking do something. He needs to, if she's going to be the breadwinner, maybe he helps out around the house. If he's going to work, right, it doesn't necessarily mean he needs to be a billionaire, millionaire, whatever. But, if she's going to be going to work and working hard and then bringing the money home, and then she comes home and he's just lounging around on the couch, that's bullshit. Anybody would think that's bullshit. So the expectation may not be that it's, has to be the most successful guy in the world, but like, bro, do something. Don't just sit on the fucking couch and mooch off of me, which, by the way, that goes both ways. You'll hear men complain about that a lot too. Like they'll complain that, some of these women just want a man who just takes care of them and everything. Well, number one, why are you dating women like that, right? But number two, like, that goes both ways. Everybody thinks that way, right? A lot of the complaints that women have of men these days, I hear this a lot from women, is that the women are now working. They're in the workforce. That's what's changed during the sexual revolution. They're in the workforce now. They're working hard. But then on top of that, even after they're working hard, they come home and the guy the guy might also work, right? But then he still expects them to do all the chores as if she's a stay-at-home mom. Well, okay, if we're both gonna work, then we should also both divvy up the chores, right? You can't just be like a selfish, self-absorbed, inconsiderate fucking asshole. A relationship is give and take. A relationship is compromise. A relationship is both parties trying to put in effort, trying to put in, bring something to the table.
Nobody wanted to
and be fair.
I married him anyway. You want to know why? Because I had the economic freedom to marry for love, not for some
There you go.
to take care of me.
How tall is he?
Oh, he's 6'1", about your height.
Oh, ooh, that was a little bit of a low blow, or maybe we can call it a high blow. Because what she was doing there, if I have to spell it out, she's basically, it's almost, what's the opposite of demasculating, like defeminizing women or whatever? Because tall women sometimes, if you've ever known tall women, sometimes they can feel a bit insecure about being tall. It almost makes them feel like a little bit, I hate to say this, but like feels a little bit mannish or a little bit defeminized, I guess. Now, it's a low blow, but I don't blame Anna for going there, because I am very much of the opinion that if you're going to live by the sword, you got to die by the sword. You got to choke on your own medicine. If you're going to dish it out, if you're going to talk shit, then I think it's fair for the other person to hit you back with like those same low blows.
None. I don't want kids.
Let's not.
And you know what? Why are you asking? You know what I mean? Like, you want to talk shit about my husband? Pause. Clip that. So like, where are you going with that? Why are you trying to get personal with it? You know what I mean?
Shouting questions from there, please. Allow these two to debate each other.
Okay, what's your question?
By the way, guys out there, that's the kind of woman that you want right there. That's the kind of woman. Oh, you're gonna talk shit about my man? Fuck you, motherfucker. I'm gonna hit you with a low blow then, right? You want a woman who's gonna stand up for you. Not that she's necessarily gonna like fight a war for you and like start going MMA boxing people or whatever, but like, yeah, you want a partner who's not gonna throw you under the bus. You want a partner who's gonna like back you up. You know what I mean? Very wholesome.
I mean, you don't really have much to answer.
Ooh.
What else to ask you? Do you think you're
True.
helping men by discouraging them from entering fulfilling marriages?
What happens to men if they don't pay child support?
Was that an answer to the question? Let me back up a little bit here, because I don't know. I might be a little bit confused here. Hold on a second here. What was the question again?
Do you think you're helping men by discouraging them from entering fulfilling marriages?
What happens to men if they don't pay child support?
That's not an answer to the question. And oh my god, that looks fucking bad for her. I don't know what she's thinking in this scenario here. I don't know if she's just super fucking desperate and out of her depth here. But that does not make you look good, Pearl. It makes you look like you know that you're losing the argument.
I mean,
What happens? What happens, Anna?
how many men do you think get
What
arrested?
happens to
I don't know
men
what the
when they
number
don't
is. But the
What
idea that
happens
there's
to
like a
men when
huge
they
number
don't-
of men getting arrested for not doing what they're supposed to do
15%.
and take care of their children, it's not a huge issue.
What happens to men when they don't
Really,
pay child support?
only
You
60%
gotta-
of child
hold on,
support payments
Anna.
get paid out.
You gotta allow her to interrogate you, not them. You gotta stop yelling questions
Look,
at her.
You can minimize men's problems all you want, but I don't think you understand how privileged of a position you're in.
In what way? How am I privileged?
Men are the ones that are on the hook for child support. Men are the ones that are on the hook for.
That's not entirely true. My understanding from the stats is that the partner who was the primary breadwinner, they're going to be the one that's on the hook for child support, or whichever parent is the one that has custody of the kid. So let's say you had a scenario. I know it's not as likely, but this does happen. If you have a scenario where the father gets custody and the mom doesn't, and the mom is like a breadwinner or whatever, she's going to have to pay child support. It just so happens that the way that men and women, because they push for these traditional gender roles, by the way, that's what they wanted. Because they push for these traditional gender roles where the man is the breadwinner and the mom is the stay-at-home parent, that creates the scenario in which the mom is going to be the one who gets custody because she was the one that was doing the child care. And the guy's going to be the one paying child support because that was the dynamic that they had kind of agreed to when they decided to have kids. But it's not that there's like a law on the books, or even that the courts are doing this just because like fuck men or anything. It's because couples are deciding that that's the dynamic that they decided to go down when they decided to have kids. And look, 100%. If you don't want to commit yourself to this kind of fucking thing, don't have kids. Wear a condom. You know what I mean? Like, I don't have a whole lot of sympathy for people who, like, have kids, like, knowingly they decide to have kids. And then they're complaining about having to take care of their kids or pay child support. You decided to do that, my guy. It is super fucking easy for you. You live in the 20th century. You could buy, like, you could use condoms. You decided not to. You could play for Plan B. You decided not to. You decided to take on that responsibility. When you decide to take on that responsibility, I don't know what to fucking tell you. That's on you. That's called, it's a little something called personal responsibility. Crazy concept.
Alimony. It's easy for you to tell men to just take the risk when you're not in that position.
So are you asserting that men shouldn't pay child support following a divorce? Do you believe that women should be financially responsible 100% after a divorce?
Feminists wanted to be equal. So I say be equal. If you guys want...
But it is equal. Again, I know that Anna's not really mentioning this here. If it is the case that women are the primary breadwinners and the man decides to be the stay-at-home father and he's been the one that's taking care of the kids, that's how the court's going to decide it. They're going to decide it where the dad has the custody and the woman has to pay child support. I think there was a case recently where I think there was like a famous MMA fighter that had to pay alimony to the man, because in that scenario, when they were in a relationship, she was the primary breadwinner and he was the one supporting her. It is equal. It's just that most couples decide to divvy up the responsibilities that way before they get a divorce. And that's on them. That's a choice that they made.
On equality, 50-50 custody, no child support, no alimony, no special privileges.
Alimony is paid out in 10%
It doesn't
of
matter if you're
divorces.
part of the
It does
10%.
matter.
That's interesting. No, I did not know that, but that's significantly small, I guess, or maybe we call it insignificant. I would have imagined that it's more than that, especially with how much people complain about it. That's interesting. That's only 10% of cases.
It's a widespread issue when it's only 10%.
The tender years doctrine is a sexist law against men. That's sexist.
How is it sexist if a woman decided to forego a career, decided to be a stay-at-home mother, and the marriage doesn't work out, she has no job, she has no income, so you think it's unfair to get support from her ex-husband so she can raise the kids,
60%,
so she can pay?
60% of kids under 5 have daycare. Daycare is an option now. You wanted to be men.
Do you know how much daycare
Who's
costs?
paying for the daycare, though?
To be men, here
Do you know how much daycare costs? Do you think it's free?
Let her answer.
A lot of things are expensive, Anna. It's men.
That's not an answer.
Women have 85% of consumer spending. Women spend money all the time. You spend.
But they're spending money for the couple, right? They're the ones that are, as again, the agreement that they decide with their husbands. They're the ones that are taking care of the home. That's why they're the majority of the spending, because they're the ones going to the grocery store and doing the grocery shopping. You know, it's not like, I think they frame this as like women are doing the majority of the spending because they're going out there and they're buying, Air Force Ones, and they're buying their matcha lattes, and they're buying their iPhone 19s. But that's not what that stat is representing. That stat is representing that in most family dynamics, the woman is taking on the role of doing the grocery shopping for the family. That's why that's there.
Spend money on hair dye. You spend money on bow ties.
See, what did I tell you? What did I tell you? I would press her on this. What are they actually spending on? Because you're saying it's all these things. I don't think you actually have data for that. I think you're just saying that because you're trying to like impugn, and apply a negative connotation to the fact that women do spend the majority of the money in those relationships. But again, it's not because they're just doing like frivolous spending. It's because they're spending the money to support the family. They're buying the fucking steaks that'll get cooked for the man who comes home and has a meal prepared for him by his wife. It's not You know, it's not luxury spending. Maybe in their circles because they're from Miami and it's a different culture over there. But generally speaking, no.
Spend money.
You should think about it.
Oh, damn.
I sure am.
Damn. Ooh. Anna's over here committing war crimes. Holy shit. But you know what? I support it. I support it. The civility politics are over. Conservatives wanted the civility politics to end. So I think it's the era of the edgy liberal, kind of like in the 90s. You guys wanted this smoke, you're going to get this smoke, motherfucker.
You spend money all of the time.
Yep.
So you wanted to be men, here it is. You're equal.
They didn't want to be men. They just wanted to be equal before the law. That's the same thing.
Pay for daycare.
Equality means that when you have a child or children, you're both responsible.
Yeah, that's
so
good.
The idea that the woman should take 100% of the costs on herself without any help from her husband or ex-husband is ridiculous. How is that fair?
Well, how is it fair that he doesn't get 50-50 custody?
Well, first of all, why are you asserting that they don't?
It's 50% his DNA. Why can't he have 50% custody? Where
There
have
was a
feminists
study.
been? I've been
Let
on
me answer your
20
question, even
different-
though I should be interrogating you.
I'm actually kind of curious. I don't think this is really like a good argument or anything, don't get me wrong, but I am actually just kind of curious. I wonder if it is literally 50-50. What percent? Is it literally 50-50? I might sound stupid saying that. Okay, you inherit approximately 50%, but the exact percentage varies slightly due to random recombination, with siblings often sharing between 36 and 61%, while males inherit more genes from their mother due to the larger X chromosome. Oh, that's right. That's interesting. And everyone gets mitochondrial DNA solely from their mother. Ah, interesting. Okay. So it sounds like most of the time, this genetic just shuffles and recombines, meaning siblings get different combinations, linear variations. 38 to 61% shared. Ancestors, male receive an X chromosome from their mother and a Y chromosome from. Oh, that makes sense. That's interesting. Think about that for a second. So when they say X and Y chromosome, it's because the chromosomes actually kind of look like X and Y shapes. X and Y chromosome. See if we can find a nice picture. I want like an actual picture, not one of these like computer generated images. I want you to see like they actually look like this. So basically this is it right here. It's a little bit messy, right? I guess it really doesn't look like a X and Y. It's if you were to pull these branches apart like manually, but they don't really like kind of sit that way. But you can see here, it's like the X chromosome has like 4 lobes. 2 of them seem a little bit shorter. I think that is the case actually. And then the Y basically has those 2 shorter lobes, and then I guess it has, I don't even know if it has like a, I don't know if we would actually call the rest of that a lobe, or if that's, I mean, I'm using totally untechnical terms here. The point is, if you look at this, yeah, it makes sense here. If you're a male, one of your chromosomes is the Y chromosome, and because it's the Y chromosome, you can see like there's less genetic material in the Y chromosome. It's smaller. I know that it doesn't exactly work out that way, but it's a little bit reductive. But you get the point. So that is really interesting to think. Like we will say as like a shorthand, and oftentimes when I talk to people about like gender and sex and everything, people have like this very simplistic like 3rd grade understanding of how things work. In reality, genetics is way more complicated than that. Chemistry is more complicated than that. It's a lot more messier than that. So the reality is that males, because they're getting one Y chromosome, they're getting, oh, well, you know what? It's even a little bit more complicated than that. I won't really get into it right now, but you get the point. You get the point here is that these chromosomes don't even carry the same amount of genetic material, so it kind of complicates things a bit. It's not exactly 50-50. Okay, anyways.
Question. Massive study out of Massachusetts that looked at 24,000 divorces. In those 25 divorces, they found that in only 8% of cases did men ask for custody.
There you go.
8%.
See, they don't tell you that. The reality is that most men in these cases don't ask for child custody. And you know what? I wouldn't either, because kids fucking suck. They smell, they shit all over themselves, they're always hungry, they cost a lot of money. I'm just kidding. I'm not I'm not that anti-baby or whatever, but I just think it's funny sometimes. I kind of got that from Jurassic Park. If you watch Jurassic Park, like the original one, the opening, Allie's trying to convince Dr. Grant to have kids, and Dr. Grant's like, "What's so great about kids? Like, they smell, they cry." You know what I mean? And it's like, he's not really wrong though, you know?
Because the average American can't afford divorce fees, Anna.
But women
It
can
costs
afford to raise the
$25,000
children
to get a
by themselves
divorce.
without support from the ex-husband. How does that make sense?
I do wonder sometimes with Pearl, like, do you think Pearl like hates like herself? Like there's a little bit of self-hating going on there, like she was a male? Or is it just like she just hates other women and she thinks that she's the exception? You know what I mean? Because there are people like that. You have the same thing with minorities sometimes. There's minorities that like Myron Gaines, for example. Myron wishes he was white. And I don't know, I guess in his mind, I think he thinks other people think he's white, or like he's white passing or something. But no, bro, they don't. And the white nationalists that you hang out with, they don't think of you as one of their own. But in his case, I think that it would be an example of like, I think he actually does hate the fact that he is not white. But on the other hand, there are people like, I'm trying to think of an example. There are going to be minorities who hate other members of their minority group, but they themselves think that they're just like an exception, like maybe like an Uncle Ruckus, I guess.
What did you say? I didn't hear you.
Obviously, Uncle Ruckus is a fictional character, but you know what I mean.
Costs, while simultaneously arguing that a woman should not get child support in order to raise the children that the former couple had together.
Are you guys equal or not? You want it
Yes,
to be equal.
equality means that you're both responsible
50
for raising the children, and that includes
right.
the
So
costs
you should have
of raising
equality,
the children.
but not at the expense of men. 50-50 custody. 50-50.
Here's what I would ask her, because she's going to keep trying to push this like, oh, equal 50 means 50-50, right? We're not going to consider the circumstances of the relationship and everything. But I would ask her this. If a parent was abusive, one of the parents was abusive, like, let's just go extreme. They're sexually abusing the children. You think they should get 50-50, right? Obviously, she's probably going to walk it back from there. But it's just to point out, like, Pearl, like, it's not that simple. It's a little bit more complicated. It starts off at 50-50, but then you have to consider the circumstances. And that's reasonable, and everybody fucking understands that. Because you're going to have situations where one of the parents isn't responsible, one of the parents doesn't make money, one of the parents might be abusive. Of course, you don't just go 50-50 across the fucking board. You have to consider the dynamic going on in that relationship.
No child support, no alimony. That's equality. You don't want
Alimony
equality.
makes sense if
You
the
want-
woman was
you
a
want-
stay-at-home mother and doesn't have a source of income. How else would she?
Like, this concept also like applies to law more generally, right? We are all equal under the law. But if someone were to get arrested for breaking into a place and stealing stuff, we're not going to punish everybody in society because, oh, we're all equal, we should all have the equal outcomes, right? No, it's equal opportunity, equality before the law. What you choose to do from there, the circumstances that you choose to engage in, that's going to affect how the law treats you. But that's also equality, because anybody else who engages in that same behavior should receive the same treatment for that. It's not that we all have the same outcomes. And I know that they like to spin that all the time, like, oh, the left liberals, they just want equality of outcome. No, we don't. You guys just kind of keep saying that, you know?
Take care of the kids following a divorce.
By getting a job just like the men.
So you're saying that a woman who doesn't have recent job history is just
Okay, yeah, I mean, I was going to go there. I'll just let her say it, because that's actually where my mind was going.
willy-nilly enter the job force or workforce, I should
Let
say,
women talk.
easily get
Gosh.
hired. Do you guys care
Men
about
do
this?
it.
So do you care about the children or not? Because you're making this about like the
What are you, a
poor
woman? That's
husband, the
emotional.
poor ex-husband who doesn't want to pay the child support, doesn't want, to take on any of the responsibilities of having children in the first place. Why is it that you seem to have a problem with men carrying out their responsibilities. But when it comes to
men are dying to care about their responsibilities. Men
Really?
are fighting to be a part of their kids' lives.
what's the empirical data on
Well, I mean, that's not the case, right? I think Anna just brought up the statistic that in most of these cases, in majority of them, the men actually decide that they don't want custody and they allow the wife to take custody of the children. So that's not to say that the men are bad or anything. Again, that might just be the dynamic that they decide makes sense for their relationship. But it's just to say, like, can't really generalize that to be the case.
that?
I don't need data. How many people in here
I don't
have
need data.
a family or a
Yeah, you don't need data when you just have
fight for their kid
narratives
get it.
and
The reason that this happens, Anna,
your political
is because lawyers
agenda.
tell them not to fight because it's so expensive and they won't win.
That's a nice narrative. Again, like narratives and stuff, it's a nice narrative, but like, where are you getting that from? Is there any data that's actually saying that that's the case? And also, right, that's something that like, if that's the case, that they don't have the money to fight these cases, doesn't that apply to both partners? Wouldn't that also apply to the women? So they're also they you know, both of them are kind of starting off from that position. So yeah, so like, I don't know. She needs to put up more than that.
What is
They
that
won't
based
win.
on?
Yeah, what is that based on?
You have to provide. Look, I
This
am open.
is so funny because she's talking to her like she's a kid, like Pearl, like, no, like let me educate you. Let me kind of like, you're not doing this right. Let me help you out here. Pearl's supposed to be a professional debater. This is supposed to be a debate between two equals. And Anna here is like completely just running circles around her. And Anna's like talking to her almost like an aunt, like Pearl, like we talked about this, okay? When you go to these things, I told you need to be prepared, okay? Let me show you, let me educate you on how you're supposed to go about this, right? But Pearl is supposed to be at a debate opponent who's on an equal level to her, and she's totally just being schooled by Anna here. And look at Anna's like a whole foot lower than her. This shouldn't be possible. I'm messing around. I'm a short guy myself, so I can make that joke.
To be convinced, but I need more than anecdotes.
Well, you know what? As the Ents would say in Lord of the Rings, she's short, so she's probably right? I don't know if you guys remember that. There's a scene in Lord of the Rings. It's in the books, I think, too, as well, where the Ents basically say, like, I think it's Merry and Pippin are talking, and they tell him something, and the Ent's like, I don't know about that, but then again, you are small, so you're probably right, something along those lines. And it's like, it's kind of a funny thing if you don't really know like the lore. You're like, like, what the hell? It doesn't make any sense. But I think it wouldn't be the context. It would be the subtext. The subtext there is that the Ents are slower. Like their life happens over a longer time period. And generally speaking, with larger animals, their perception of time is slower, or it's actually faster, actually. But smaller animals tend to perceive time in smaller resolutions. Look it up, by the way. That might sound crazy, but it's true. So, like moments, small moments are like they seem slower to a smaller animal. Anyways, the Ents don't really. They're not as perceptive of like day-to-day, minute-by-minute goings on in Middle Earth, and a lot of their interactions would have been with wizards and with elves, and the wizards and elves are like very wise, they're very smart and everything. They talk to the trees. And so the Ents experience with like another intelligent, smart organism that they converse with and get information from are elves and wizards, which to them are small. So that's the funny subtext there. I don't think the author ever spells it out for you. You just kind of have to make that connection, which I like, by the way. That's good world building, where you lay it out and like it's just a matter of fact, like this is just the world, right? And then people have to kind of like interpret what's going on there.
More than vibes and feelings.
Totally apropos of
Because
nothing.
we're talking about something serious here. We're talking about raising children. We're talking about the shared responsibility of raising children. That, of course, includes the
90%
cost.
of disputed custody goes to women. That's not
Yeah.
equal.
90%. That's a totally made-up statistic. Where are you citing that from?
God, dude. Oh my God, it looks so fucking bad. The crazy thing is, these are the kind of like really simple back to basics kind of like debate technique is, it's not even unfair. It's literally, if you're going to say something in a debate, you have to be prepared to back it up. And I think a lot of times with some of these debaters in some of the spaces that they operate in, they're used to controlling the narrative and the dialogue and everything and not having the pushback. And they're not even used to, like, they're just used to saying stuff and not getting any pushback. That, like, the most obvious, the most normal question, where are you getting that from? And she looks like a total fish out of water. And by the way, like, if you find yourself in this situation as a debate person, you got to have something better. Even if you don't have shit to back up your shit, you can't just sit there and look like a fish out of water. You got to respond with something. My God, she looks like a, you know, I don't want to be too mean here. I should be, because she's kind of a scumbag.
Let's take a break there, because our time actually...
Yeah, you need to bail her out. Jesus Christ. Okay. Unfortunately, I have a meeting in a few minutes here, so I'm going to have to pick this up on another time. The nice thing is the video is segmented, so I could see here that I'm on part 2. So we're going to pick this up at another time, and it'll be part 2. All right. I'll catch you guys later. Bye.